Okay, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, part of the Greater Yeshiva YouTube. Today we're doing a Nedarim Daf Pevov, number 86. We're going to share for you today to talk about a Gemara that was really discussed in Masechus Ksuvos. The Gemara ends off the discussion, which is pretty much verbatim what it says in Masechus Kedushin, with a little bit of a different language, different answer than it gives in Masechus Ksuvos. We'll try to piece together why it gives two different answers. One in Masechus Ksuvos, one in Masechus Nedarim. Primarily, we'll discuss that, with Menzion share. Let's get started. Hey, I'm with Bays on the bottom. About 6 lines from the bottom. Ella Amar Rav Huna, Raider of Yeshua. We're trying to figure out in the Mishnah on Pei Amid Aleph. The Mishnah says that a woman, she says she's makdish, whatever she makes for her husband's mouth. Anything cooking for her husband, she tries to ask her the food that she makes for her husband. Now, a woman has an obligation to cook for her husband. Her maiseh, anything she makes, whether she's making clothing, she makes food, she's obligated to give it to her husband. So, really, she's not allowed to take a neder. She's meshubud, right? She's obligated to her husband. You can't take a neder on something you're meshubud to. Right? You don't have the rights over it. It's the husband's rights. So the Gemara says, Ba'omer, and the Gemara says the Gemara says maybe it works after Gerushin, but the Gemara says that's the davar shelo bala olam, right? Gerushin didn't happen yet. So Amar Rav Huna Rei Yeshua, Gemara is yikdashi yadal saying the yadayim hayisnu ba'olam. Really, she's going to be makdish her hands, not what she makes with her hands. Her hands are herself, right? V'chi amra haki kadsha. So she's makdish instead of saying a davar shelo bala olam, right, which is the food she's going to make, or food, or her body after gerushin, right? She's makdish her yadayim now, right? So she makdish her yadayim. Her husband owns what she makes, her maiseh, and then what she makes with her hands. Her hands, right? Technically, she owns, and that's isnu ba'olam. That it's in her power to be makdish right now. The Gemara asks, is it really kadosh? Right? Even though technically her hands belong to her, right? There's an important distinction. Yes, shalo, right? We always talked about it in possession, dini maminus. There's shalo and rishuso. Shalo means it physically belongs to me, the object, and rishuso means I have control over the value of the object. So the Gemara is really asking over here, Meshavdan Yadei Labal, even though technically her hands do belong to her, the husband is not koner the body of his wife, that he really owns every limb of his wife. He owns what she produces with her hands. However, the Gemara asks, whatever she makes, the value whatever she makes with her hands, that's meshubut. And that's also part of a shibud, right? Our hands are part of a shibud. Whatever which she makes with her hands are meshubut to the husband. She can't do that either. So the Gemara says, "Da'amar l'chim garsha." My hands are kadosh when I become meguresha. Whereas a hashta miyas lo megarsha. It's also davar shel ba'olam, right? She's not divorced yet. And the Gemara proves it. Sorry, the Gemara asks, how do you know such a thing would work? So the Gemara answers, top of Pei Vav and Aleph, Amar Rabbi Elo, Ma Ilo Amar L'Chavero Sodazu Shani Mochalach Lekshek Achanim Mimcha Takdish Mila Kacha. No, it's similar to a person that says, I have a field, I'm going to sell it to you, right? I'm selling you a field, and when I buy back from you, I plan to buy back from you, it'll become kadosh, mila kacha. It'll become kadosh automatically when he buys it back from him. Nor is Maskal Rabbi Yirmiyah, and that apparently works. Maskal Rabbi Yirmiyah midami. You can't compare the two cases. Right? He owns the field now. He's making the hektish before he sells it. She's not in her power right now. She's already in the marriage. Haladami, what is it comparable to? I already sold you a field a week ago. And he says, when I buy it back from him, I become kadosh. Of course, it's not going to work. It's not in his power to do that. Papa asked another question. You can't compare it to a case where he sold a field and he wants to be makdish. That's not comparable to our case. Gabi Zvina Psika Milsayu, Gabi Isha Mipsika Milsa. Right? There, right? It's completely sold to the other person when he wants to be makdish. And here, the woman owns her hands. Shalo, she doesn't own the bershus of what, the maiseh yadayim, but The hands she owns partially. Halodam. What is it comparable to? Omer l'chaveru, sadazu shemashkanti lach. Right. Right. You borrow. I borrow money from you. Right. And I give you a mashko, and I give you a collateral. Right. I give you my field as a collateral. Right. So as a collateral, I own the collateral, but you have control over the collateral. In the event that I default on the loan, you get to take it. And if you would say, again, if I gave you as my field as a mashkon, I can say, since it belongs to me, when I buy it back, it'll become kadosh. Shouldn't it become kadosh? Right? Similar over here, right? The woman, her hands belong to her, or might say them don't belong to her. The value doesn't belong to her. But when I buy it back, when I become a gureshes, right, it should become kadosh. Asked back, midami, it's not exactly comparable. So that'd be other lift also. A field, right? Once he pays the loan, I can take my money, or I go to a different person with money, get money, and redeem it whenever I want to, right? Isha biyadalih garish. It's not up to her to have gerushin, right? A husband's the only one who controls gerushin. She can't be a garish herself. The husband has to be a garish. That's why you have a little problem with agunos. What's the case of a wife comparable? I gave you a mashkon for 10 years, right? It's going to be a mashkon for 10 years. When I put it after 10 years, it's going to kadosh, right? In that case, right? So in that case, it would work, right? It technically would work after 10 years. Mila kadosh wouldn't be kadosh. Similarly over here also, it's not available right now for gerushin, but feasibly in the future, there's a good chance Shubin Koreshes. Masker Rav Asher says you can't compare the two cases. Hasam kids, there after 10 years for sure he can redeem it. Isha Meisla Kitusa, it's not possible, right? There's no surety that she's definitely gonna be divorced. It's possible she'll never be divorced. Ella, so it can't work. You can't compare it to the case of Mashkon. Ella Amar Rav Ashi, the top of Pevam and Beis, shiny konamos, the chi kedushas haguf domi. Konomos are different. Taking a neder is like kedusha guf. Kedusha guf when I makdish an animal, right? Behema zu for a korban, right? If I set up an aputiki, I set up, right? I borrow money from somebody. I say I'm going to repay you with an evid. I have an evid knaini, or I have chametz, right? Or I have hektish, kedusha guf, an animal, right? Meaning, either, right, I set it up as a aputiki. I designated this is going to be a repayment for your loan if I can't pay you back. So if I go ahead, whatever I designated for you, and I'll makdish it as an animal, right? I set aside an animal, then I'll makdish it as a korban, right? Or I set aside a loaf of bread, and then Pesach came chametz, or I took the evid as mashach for the evid. So that releases it from its shibud, even though technically you have a lien on these items, on the animal, on the evid, or on the chametz. It's mafkia the shibud. Now, how does it work that it's mafkia the shibud? So the idea that it's mafkia the shibud is because kedusha guf, when I'm makdish an animal, right? There's no value to the animal anymore. The animal ceases to exist in the category of value, right? I give the shalot to the Beis HaMikdash. The animal belongs to the gizbar in the Beis HaMikdash. There's no value anymore. It has to be brought as a korban, this animal, right? As opposed to when I say a nedava, I say I'm going to bring a korban, but I don't designate which animal, so then it's called kedusha's damim. There's no kedusha's guf, and if the animal gets lost, right, I don't have to replace it. But neder, right, I want to dafka this animal, so this animal, it loses all value. It's supposed to be it's earmarked for a korban. So similarly, chametz on Pesach, right? The Gemara says the Torah took it out of your shus to make it hefker, and shichrur, no shachar and evet, it's hefker. So all these things, they take away the damim, the value. So therefore, I had bilus over, even when I set it up as a lien, right? You had control over the value, but I still maintain the shalom. But once I do these things, I'm makdish it, or I'm a shachar the evet, or the chametz becomes chametz, so it loses its value, and therefore the other person can't collect anymore. Similar over here by a neder, when she says makdish, she's makdish her hands for her husband, so her hands are in her rishus. And even though technically he controls the value, whatever she produces with the hands, that belongs to the husband, once she makes her hands like a korban, almost like a korban, so it ceases to value the rishus that the husband had, the domain he had over the value ceases to exist. And that's why it takes effect. There's a new answer. We didn't understand this before, that Konamos have this power of Kedusha Aguf. The Gemara introduces that. Why does the Mishnah say that he should be made for the neder because he might be Megarisher, right? He should be made for the neder because it works right now. Gemara says Tani va'od shema yigarshena. Another reason, because he might divorce her, or maybe not another reason, maybe in addition to the reason shema yigarshena. Now, seems like the Gemara is saying there's two different answers, right? It works right away. And Od Shema Yigar. Now the problem with Shema Yigar, we said before, doesn't work, right? Shema Yigar because Davar Shalom Ba'olam. So that reason doesn't work by itself. So it's sort of, we have to fill in the blank over here. If you look in the Sugi Mesachas Ksuvos, and the Ran himself here brings, right, the Gemara is missing words. The Gemara says, even though, right, that Konamos is Mafkim and the Yeshibut, Almul Rabban the Shibudi the Baal. The Rabbanan were aware of this, and therefore they made the shibud of the husband stronger, that even though normally hektish, konamos, or mafkiyah midei shibud, right, they remove the shibud, here they don't remove the shibud, the Rabbanan said. Now, once in light of that, so the Gemara says, when does it work? It works when he's megarish. That's seeing what the Gemara in Ksuvos says. But here's a little differently. But Shema Yarshena, seems like it's both reasons combined. It's the reason of hektish or konamos mafkim de shibud, plus the fact Shema Yigarshena allows it to work right now. I would assume it works right now for two different reasons, a combination of two different reasons. I'm not going to get into exactly how it works right now, but that's basically how it works, because there's a possibility of gerish, and plus the fact that konamos are normally mafkim de shibud. It's just that Rabbanan strengthened the shibud of the husband, that she can't really do it. She can't be makdish something completely, right, to Mavkim the Yeshiva. So somehow it's a combination of the two work together that the neder should take effect right now. I will explain this in further detail in Ian Ben Sion. You're going to have to wait for that share to hear exactly, precisely the lumdas on how it works. The Mishnah, Nadra Ishto v'savar shenadra bito. His wife took a neder. Now, a lot of fathers, a lot of husbands also have daughters. I also have daughters. I have a wife. Nadra Ishto v'savar shenadra bito. I thought it was my daughter that took the neder. Really, it was my wife. Nadra bito was savar shenadra ishto, or my daughter took a neder. I thought it was my wife. Nadra v'nazir was savar shenadra b'karba. She took a nazirus upon herself. I thought she pledged something to the Beis Hamikdash. Nadra b'karba was savar shenadra b'nazir. I thought she took a nazirus. She really pledged something to the Beis Hamikdash. Nadra b'tein was savar shenadra b'navim. She took a neder from figs. I thought it was from grapes. Nadra b'navim was savar shenadra b'teinim. The opposite, right? She took a neder from grapes. I thought it was figs. Harei ziyachzer v'yafer. You can't be made for something under the wrong assumptions, even if it's a detail, right? She took a neder from grapes. It turns out it was figs. I have to know precisely what I'm being made for the neder, and if I try to be made for the neder for the wrong thing, when I find out what precisely the neder was, or who it was from, or what the nature of the neder was, then I have 24 hours once I find out about that to be made for the neder. The first hafara is hafara b'tos, and therefore it doesn't work. Just like if you're mat or something and you had the facts wrong, it doesn't work. Hafara also, if you have the facts wrong, it doesn't work. You get another opportunity when you find the facts. We'll talk about it tomorrow to be made for the neder. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion, where I tell you a really lumdish explanation. This explanation would only be appreciated by people who have sat in the base medrash and learned Ian for a number of years in the base in yeshiva. But maybe I can explain it clearly enough that even the layman can understand what I'm saying. It's a very deep share. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Ian Ben Sion coming up next.